Hello, everybody, and welcome to the LGBTQ Consortium. My name is Kim Hunt, and I'm Executive Director of Affinity Community Services. Affinity is a social justice organization that works with and on behalf of Black LGBT communities, queer youth, and allies. And we are thrilled to be here tonight for the show. This week has been kind of a roller coaster emotionally when it comes to Supreme Court decisions and some of the public policy pieces that have moved through Congress. And, on the one hand, we have the disappointments in terms of the sovereignty of Native American families being disrupted with recent Supreme Court decision, as well as a setback several decades with the decision of the Voter Rights Act. On the other hand, there was the striking down of the Defense of Marriage Act. Parts of it were ruled unconstitutional, and the way was paved for same-sex couples to be married and their marriages to be honored in California. So those were good things, and we'll talk about some of those bad things at another time. This is also Pride Weekend for the LGBT community, so happy Pride to everybody. Although this is a celebratory time, we do want to take a moment to talk about some serious stuff. One of those things is what happened in terms of the Immigration Reform Act that recently made its way through the Senate and is now in the House of Representatives and will probably be there for a very long time. So we're going to be talking today with someone from the United African Organization, and her name is Sarah Travis, and she's right here. She's a community and resource and communication specialist at UAO. And Sarah and I are going to talk today about diversity visas, which are a component of the, well, I was going to say a component of the immigration reform law, but they were taken out.
Right.
So they're not a component. So, Sarah, why don't you tell us a little bit about UAO first and how you got there and the things that you do there.
Sure. Thanks, Kim, for inviting me on the show. As Kim said, I work with United African Organization, which is a coalition of African community-based organizations that promotes civil justice, social and economic justice, civil participation, and overall empowerment of African immigrants and refugees in Illinois. So we do that through several programs, and I'll be brief for the sake of the show. We offer free English classes, citizenship classes. We help people to naturalize to become U.S. citizens. We also have the Immigrant Family Resource Program, which helps people navigate social benefit services like Link Card, Medicaid, Medicare. I got involved with United African Organization through a Google search.
Thank God for Google.
Exactly. After I graduated from university, I really wanted to get involved with the African community here, and the United African Organization was the first site that I stumbled upon.
Wow.
Sent in my internship application, started from there, and now I have been with UAO for a year now in my position.
And I will add that UAO is a partner with Affinity on our immigration initiative called Building Bridges. And Sarah is on our advisory council. And the Building Bridges initiative is really about bringing African American and LGBT voices into the immigration reform dialogue and building bridges across communities. And we have an online survey that I encourage people to take. It only takes about 10 minutes to complete. And that information is going to help us do some community workshops, education workshops, as well as community engagement around action planning and what do we do next to make sure that we all have humane policies when it comes to our lives. And you can find the survey on our website, which is affinity95.org. It will take you to a link that has the survey in English, French, and Spanish, and please complete those surveys. We really need that information. So, Sarah, let's talk about First, can you talk broadly about the comprehensive immigration reform bill that just made it through the Senate, created by the Gang of Eight, as they
Right.
like to say, and then maybe delve into the diversity visas and what those are?
Sure. So comprehensive immigration reform, right, is a huge buzz phrase that we've been hearing in the media a lot when it comes to immigration and how we treat people who may be citizens or who are not citizens. So right now, the comprehensive immigration reform is seeking to work with there's approximately 11 million undocumented individuals living in the United States. And how do we make sure that, one of the goals, is to create a pathway to citizenship. This is what community-based organizations are fighting for. So in the actual bill, I haven't read all of it because it's 800 pages long. But one of the main components is strengthening the border. So they have this huge project that after you strengthen the border, which is about 700 miles that they're wanting to build and construct and do all these things to prevent more undocumented individuals from coming into the U.S. When that's done, in the bill, it says that they will allow individuals who are undocumented in the United States to become on a path of citizenship. So you have this status that's not permanent, but you're no longer undocumented.
Got it.
So it's in between having a status and not having a status. You're a prospect. It's a little complicated, but you're basically a prospect legal resident. In the immigration reform bill, it notes that it's going to take approximately 13 years for someone to register that they're undocumented and to go through this kind of formal process. So they're in this, in-between stage and to eventually citizenship. With that, it's, obviously you have to clear the backlog of individuals who have already been waiting to receive their green card. For example, if you are an individual from Mexico and your family members petition for you, you're most likely waiting since 93.
Oh my goodness.
So the wait is very long. They're wanting to first tighten the border security and then give this kind of provisional status to undocumented individuals who are living in the U.S. and then clear that backlog to make sure that we don't have this amount of numbers that are already waiting for their green card legally and then the 11 million undocumented people who will then join that process.
Okay.
So comprehensive immigration reform, there's a lot of aspects to it that are, for the sake of this show, cannot be explained in 25 minutes.
Take days.
It would take days. But the overarching theme is allowing individuals who are undocumented to eventually have some sort of legal status, which is what is really important in terms of keeping families together and in terms of, giving people the right to speak up for who they are and not live in the shadows.
Yeah.
Basic rights that everyone as a human being should be given.
Yeah. So I know United African Organization did a lot of organizing around the diversity visas. So give us the background on that, but also tell us about some of the activities that you guys did.
Sure. So a little brief history of the diversity visa program is put on through the Department of State in the what is called the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965. So this is the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965, or the INA, basically allows people to start immigrating into the U.S. from all over the world.
So it opened it up.
It opened it up for immigration, people to come into the U.S. From the INA in 1990, they made an amendment that would allow people from underrepresented nations to come into the United States under what is called the diversity visa program.
Okay.
So these individuals are from historically low, underrepresented countries for the purpose of what we work on, African countries and other small countries around the world, and was later adopted and implemented in 1995. So that's when people actually started using the program.
Okay.
So just a quick backtrack. It was created by the Department of State in the INA of 1965. In 1990, there was an amendment to the Immigration and Nationality Act, which opened up diversity visas for underrepresented individuals. And in 1995, that amendment was implemented.
Okay.
So it's a little confusing.
What a long trek.
It's a very long process. Initially, the diversity visa allowed 55,000 individuals from underrepresented countries, as I mentioned before, to apply for a green card, and it's complete lottery. So it's not, they're not taking into account your education, they're not taking into account other things. You just apply and it's selected at random.
Okay.
After that, in 1999, there's a lot of dates here, the Department of State decided to take 5,000 out of that 55,000 and dedicate it to specific countries like Nicaragua, Cuba, Guatemala, El Salvador, and certain areas or certain countries in the Soviet Union.
Okay.
So that's what it is now. So we've got 55,000 diversity visa green cards that are allowed per year, and 5 of those are for those countries that I named previously, and the remaining 50,000 diversity visas are opened up to the rest of the world, with some exceptions of other countries that have a lot of population here.
And now, diversity visas are how most African immigrants come to America? African immigrants and refugees?
Well, just immigrants.
Okay.
Refugees go through a different
Okay.
process,
Okay.
a formal process, because they're fleeing their country due to persecution.
Right. Okay.
Immigrants come, actually 20% of the current population of African immigrants in the United States benefited from the diversity visa program. So when
that's significant.
Yes, exactly. When we talk about the diversity visa program and comprehensive immigration reform and how that bill eliminates that program, we're really talking about a really significant way that African and Black immigrants migrate to the United States. So the elimination of that program would really effectively stop the future flow of Black immigrants to the United States, with the exception of family-based petitions, which we could talk on another show.
That's another show. But diversity visas do not require a family member to sponsor.
No.
Okay.
Diversity visas are completely selected at random. One of the requirements is that you cannot have a family member living in the United States when you apply, because
you cannot
have, because it is believed that that person could then sponsor you via the family petition. Diversity visas in 2012 alone, 50% of the applicants and the beneficiaries actually came from African countries.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So we really see a large population of African immigrants coming in through the diversity visa, and the program itself benefiting future African immigrants.
Which really makes the work of organizations like UAO so important. If folks who come through diversity visas cannot have a family member here,
right,
that means potentially not having community when they come.
Exactly.
So I know there were a lot of activities that UAO was engaged in during the time when there was hope that some of these provisions could be included in the Senate version of the bill. Tell us about some of that work.
So, of course, UAO being partially an advocacy group, we were lobbying our elected officials, specifically members of the Black Congressional Caucus, just because the bill is eventually going to go to the House. So they need to know that members of the CBC need to know that immigration is in fact a Black issue when we talk about things like this, and it's not just a Latino issue. Other than lobbying our elected officials, we also took part in rallies on the Federal Plaza, making phone calls, letting people know. Most importantly, telling our constituency about the immigration bill and telling them, they're wanting to cut the diversity visa program. And then they're like, really? That affects me. That affects my family. That affects my country. So really, when you get that grassroots movement going, hopefully there's a potential growth from that. And when this bill moves to the House, it will be able to hopefully have diversity visas put on the table, at least for some sort of conversation around that.
Okay. I want to remind folks that this is a call-in show. We're having a great time talking, but we want you to join us as well. You can call in with your questions or comments to 312-738-1060 and let us hear from you. This is, as you were saying, Sarah, this is a Black issue. I think a lot of times, particularly in Chicago, when we think about immigration, we think about our Latino brothers and sisters, but immigration covers a diversity of individuals and ethnicities and different countries. And I think a lot of Black Americans in particular don't quite understand the connection there about the importance of diversity visas, and not diversity visas alone, but immigration reform in general.
Sure.
Now, I know one of the activities, too, that UAO engaged in was getting a city council referendum passed regarding diversity visas. Tell us, a little bit about what that strategy was about, given that the immigration reform legislation is federal.
Sure.
And city council is local.
Right. So first and foremost, I would love to thank Alderman Will Burns for really doing amazing work and eventually getting us a city council resolution in support of diversity visas. It's important to realize that African immigrants, there are roughly 100,000 in our city of Chicago. So it's and that's just from the continent itself, not including some Caribbean immigrants as well. So when we have these relationships with these elected officials, even at the alderman base, we build the relationships with that, and we let them know that this is affecting your constituency in your city. And with the support of the city framework, we'll be able to hopefully move some federal policies as well.
Because everybody knows everybody else, so that's good.
That's very true. Also, with the help of Congressman Bobby Rush, who's been very instrumental in trying to really fight for diversity visas and fight for immigration as not only a Black issue, but other issues, Asian issues, and other ethnicities as well. I think with his influence and Alderman Will Burns, hopefully we'll be able to see that when it goes through the House in the future.
So you mentioned it going to the House, and we've talked about this a couple of times. So the bill has passed the Senate last night.
It was yesterday afternoon.
Yeah, so this is fresh, hot off the presses. So now it goes to the House. So what can just the average citizen do to help move this legislation?
One of the important things is to be an active voice in your community. Civic participation is not a spectator sport. It's very much, you have to get into it. You have to understand the issues, how it affects maybe you, your friend, your family, maybe your neighbor, maybe your school friend. So one of the important things that anyone watching or anyone in the community or not in the community can do is to really contact their local official, their congressperson, because we know this is moving into the House, and we know that your elected congressperson will be voting on it. So making sure that, this is an important issue for not only the African community, but other underrepresented communities who benefit from this program as well. And making sure that people understand that although we are very strong, we have strong ties with our Latino brothers and sisters, that there are other ethnicities that benefit from this program and need to be spoken for.
That's an important point, and it leads me to probably clarify some things for some folks about why Affinity, as an organization that focuses on lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender issues, would be engaged in work around immigration. And first of all, we're talking about oppression on many levels, and it plays itself out with different groups in different ways. But beyond that broader piece, there is the fact that LGBT couples are more likely to be binational. That is, one person in the couple is an American citizen and the other person is from another country. And 1 in 10 Black LGBT couples is binational. And given some of what happened with DOMA, or the Defense of Marriage Act, with the Supreme Court striking it down as unconstitutional, it'll be interesting to see how that now plays out in terms of immigration reform and the impact of immigration policy on LGBT binational couples. Because the piece about marriage being defined as between a man and a woman has just been changed, so that potentially opens the door for same-sex couples, the American member, to be able to sponsor his or her partner for citizenship. There's going to have to be a lot more legislation to clarify how that works and what that looks like, because all this just happened this week.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see what transpires. We know that laws in and of themselves aren't enough. There are gatekeepers everywhere, and we want to make sure that people are following the spirit of the law as well as the letter of the law when it comes to those issues. So I know that UAO does a lot of education around these issues, and one thing that you may not even know yet, because your executive director, Ali Kaba, and I have had this conversation, is that we're going to be partnering on a community forum in August 31st, at the Chicago Urban League to educate our folks about diversity visas and the importance of them, and try to figure out as community members, what we can do to move this legislation forward as well. So I know UAO has a couple of things coming up that folks might want to know about in terms of programming and other issues.
Sure, thanks. Well, tomorrow from 9 to 1 p.m. at 10 West 35th Street, which is right next to our office, we'll be hosting our leadership development workshop, and it'll be centered around community building and organizational capacity, and also coalition building, both internally and externally. So if you work for a nonprofit, or if you're starting your own nonprofit, this is a really good workshop to kind of work through some ways to learn about building organizational capacity in terms of coalition building. On Sunday, if I may add, we're also going to be talking about this very issue and how comprehensive immigration reform impacts Black immigrants, the future flow of Black immigrants, which is hosted by the African Ministries at Trinity United Church of Christ, which is going to be from 2:30 to 4:30 Sunday afternoon. So if you guys are interested, definitely check it out and stop by.
And we know that this weekend is Pride weekend, so there are a couple of major events coming up in terms of Pride weekend. So one is Dyke March, which is tomorrow at Margate Park in Andersonville, and there is some programming that starts at 1, but the actual step-off for the parade is at 3, and then there's the Pride Parade along Halstead, and all I can advise about that is get there early. The step-off is at noon, but people start gathering for that hours ahead of time. So those are two big things that are coming up this weekend, and I know we have a call. We had a call.
Call back.
Please call back. If whoever that was, please give us a call back in the next couple of minutes, because unbelievably the show is almost over. And just as a reminder, we need folks to fight for getting all of these important provisions back in the immigration bill. This is going to be a long fight through the House of Representatives, and we have a lot of work to do. Okay, I think we can squeeze one call in. Let's squeeze it in.
What time is your workshop tomorrow for nonprofit organizations?
There you go.
Great. Thank you for that call. Our workshop starts at 9 and is until 1. It's on coalition building and also internally and externally, and that's at 10 West 35th Street, just on 35th and State, floor 6.
Okay, tomorrow at 9.
Tomorrow at 9 a.m., yes.
How much is that workshop?
Pardon?
How much is it?
It's completely free for the community.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that call. Okay, one last thing before we wrap up completely. We know that also while we had this federal win with same-sex marriage, at the local level, state level, we still have a fight to go. And we have an event coming up the first day of the fall session called the March on Springfield for Marriage Equality. That's going to be October 22nd. There will be tons of buses going there. And you will see much more information about that coming up. You can check our website, affinity95.org, to find out more about that march. You can also find our online immigration survey there and much more information about what we're doing as an organization and what our partners are doing. So I want to thank Sarah for joining me today. We covered a lot of ground, but there's a lot more ground to cover, so we'll probably ask you to come back. So
Definitely.
Happy Pride, everyone. Be safe, drink responsibly, practice safe sex, and be ready for work on Monday. Thank you.